The number one thing that people say to me when they see me is, thank you for how you helped my family during COVID. Thank you. Nothing else even comes close.
Wait, what?
The number one thing that people say to me when they see me is, thank you for how you helped my family during COVID. Thank you. Nothing else even comes close.
There was so much cringe in this podcast. This might take a while.
You know, a lot of times when you're doing podcasts and you have a show, you know, you'll warm up the guest and you'll say stuff, and you're like, people will say things, and you're like, I don't know if this guy really means it or not. I am a fan of today's guest. So I invited him because I like listening to him. I don't agree with everything he says, but I like listening to him. I like the history of his family, his father, what they've done. Again, this doesn't mean we have to agree politically, but I like how united the family is. So I said, we got to get this guy on the podcast. We went back and forth. I don't know how long the team's been going back and forth with Chris. There's certain people that don't need an introduction, because when you think of last names that are prominent last names, prominent families, Cuomo is one of those last names. You don't have to explain who it is. You just say Cuomo. You're either going to go to a place you like, respect, you know, these are great people. You're going to go and say, well, I can't believe they did this. I can't believe, but you can't say you don't know who they are. Chris has, Adam was joking with him earlier saying, hey, you know, Chris, are you getting nervous with the light? You know, I know it's not the first time. He says, yeah, I'm totally getting nervous. Camera, yeah. Chris has been in front of camera for a long, long time, and he shines. He's a star.
This was easily PBD's worst podcast ever. It was supposed to be an opportunity for PBD to hold Chris Cuomo accountable for all the fear-mongering, hypocrisy and fake news he spread on CNN during the pandemic. But instead, PBD brought his knee pads to suck from Cuomo's teat. It got so bad at one point that I half expected Adam to bust out a six-pack of Bud Light and share them around while they dry-humped each other live on camera. And the live chat was just wild. I've never seen so many clown emojis in one place before. It was probably one of the most hostile live chats I've ever seen. People were saying they're going to unsubscribe, they were dropping L's like no tomorrow, and people got so mad they even paid for super chats just to say how soft PBD was, throwing softball questions the whole time and simping for Chris and his brother Andrew, the former governor of New York, for 3 hours. The title of the podcast is Chris Cuomo Uncensored, but it came across as more of a coming out party. So they started with this cringe as fuck gag where PBD brought out 2 sets of dumbbells, a 50-pound pair and a 60-pound pair, and challenged Cuomo to do bicep curls to prove how strong he is. If you didn't see it, Chris Cuomo did his own gag a few years ago where he lifted a fake 100-pound dumbbell in his office and sparked a debate at the time over whether or not it was actually real. Even Joe Rogan thought it was real.
Okay.
This is where we get our news in America.
No, there's a photo and he's wearing a t-shirt. This is different. That's real. That's a real weight. Whether or not that weighs 100 pounds, it might weigh 100 pounds. I don't believe that he has a fake 100-pound weight. He's a big person. I think that guy's pretty
strong
large.
Dude. I'm sure he's not. I'm sure the weight isn't fake.
That's the picture. Here's the thing. I saw these people that are complaining and saying it's not real and all this shit. Listen, you can do that. That can be done. People who think you can't do that are crazy. He's bigger than me. Look, he's bigger than me, and there's a video of me on Instagram with a 92-pound kettlebell, and I'm cleaning it and pressing it 10 times over my head.
Right.
He's bigger. That guy's a lot bigger than me.
Right.
He could hold 100 pounds over his head and do it like that.
Right.
Like if I have a 100-pound dumbbell in my arm right now, I could press it. He's bigger than me. He could do it. Some people are fucking strong.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with doing that. It's when he does
Look
the
at this.
news.
Challenge to Chris Cuomo. Prove you're not a liar. Prove you can actually lift that weight you're showing with. See, this guy just wants attention. Because you should know that there's people that are freak strong that could lift that.
So after Joe's brain fart, a couple of his mates pulled him aside and set him straight. So he came back on his podcast to address his mistake.
We were talking about on the podcast whether or not Chris Cuomo was really lifting a 100-pound barbell. Now, I had completely forgot we even talked about this until I stumbled upon an article online about it. And in the article, it actually referenced us talking about it on the podcast.
Right.
And apparently
He wasn't.
They think I'm quite stupid for believing that Chris Cuomo really had this 100-pound barbell or dumbbell that he was lifting up.
It looked very light.
It did look very light. But so my thought was, how big is Chris Cuomo? So
that's a good point.
I thought he was bigger than he is. So I Googled it.
Yeah.
He's only 182 pounds, which it says he's 6'2", 182 pounds. I don't know if that's accurate.
That's, yeah.
That's probably
6'2", 180? Then he
he
doesn't look that lean.
Thin guy.
He doesn't look that lean.
But anyway,
Well, I guess he's on
that
TV.
makes him 20 pounds lighter than me.
Okay.
So very unlikely that
Yeah.
he's carrying that dumbbell like that. So then I'm like, okay, I got to ask some people who would actually know. So I sought out some people online, and one of them was Rob Kearney. He's been on the podcast before. He's World's Strongest Gay.
Oh, yeah, I know that guy.
He's awesome.
I follow him.
Love that dude. And I think he won recently a pound-for-pound strongman title.
I believe it.
He's not a big guy. He's a tank.
Tank.
But he's only about 5'10", maybe. But fucking gorilla strong.
Yeah.
So he says to me, so I say to him, have you ever seen the thing? And he says, I just watched the video. I think it's fake, LOL. He doesn't look to be bracing hard enough for it to be actually 100 pounds.
Good point. He
Right.
is kind of wishy-washy in his seat.
He's a real expert, right? So he's an actual strongman. So I'm pretty convinced. So then I asked Robert Oberst, who's also Robert is fucking enormous. Absolutely one of the strongest men in the world. He's a Goliath. I mean, you sit next to him, 300
Really?
plus pounds.
Oh, geez.
So he says the picture looks possible because his elbow's up and stable, but the video where he's at his desk showing the weight off, he moves it around out at an angle that would be the smallest head of the top of the bicep taking all the weight, and it doesn't even faze him. Said if it's real, he's stronger than anyone I've ever seen use a dumbbell.
Wow.
I'd say it's a 40-pound weight with a 100 pounds written on it. He said lots of Insta-famous lifters have fake dumbbells and plates. So two experts,
interesting.
Rob Kearney and Robert Oberst, both of them call bullshit. So I defer to them.
So that's the background on Cuomo's 100-pound dumbbell gag. And here's how it went down on the PBD podcast.
You got to show us what you got. I got you 250s, and I got 260s. I want to see if you can stand up and curl those.
Okay.
If you can do 50s and then go to 60s.
No problem, Cuomo feels.
No, I think he's got it. But this is real weights, by the way. I'm having a hard time picking it up.
Yeah, don't hurt yourself.
Baby, do not hurt yourself, man.
Girlfriend Olaf. Okay, Chris, let's see.
All right.
What you got?
I will do this, but
Nice.
there's a bigger point, right? Which is clearly it's not a 100-pound dumbbell, right? And in the video, I then hand it to one of my staffers, and he falls on the ground. And it was a gift from a friend of mine when we were starting the show. And what was interesting to me about it, I never said anything about it, is the lust for gotchas and to make something out of nothing, which this is a joke. This is fine.
Yeah.
Although I will do this because I backed from no challenge. But I think, look, the point is, look,
It's just a family name.
the point is as easy as this is.
Damn, Chris.
Yeah, this is nothing all day. All day.
By the way, 50
That's
is
real, by
that's
the way.
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Look at 60s curl.
There we go.
Okay.
That's not the point. The point is not that I'm the strongest man in news. It's that
Kind of is, Chris.
our lust for
There's a subhead
coming
in there.
after people for gotchas, I think it's a problem. I think it's a real problem. This was a joke, but the desire to link it to, and that's why you can't believe this. I think it's gotten to be too much of a contagion. But I'm happy to dispel that.
Yeah, well, that was pretty
Thank you
impressive.
for not
right
having
there.
hundreds.
Yeah, that is not
Otherwise,
fake news
my
right there.
shoulder would be down here right now. 'cause
What
I'm
can
too
you
old.
actually curl? What can you actually, like, what's
In
the
truth-
most you ever curled dumbbells? Like
The
10
truth-
times.
Probably that. I don't
Okay.
do arms.
Got it.
I don't believe, not that I don't believe. I'm old, right? I'm going to be 53. I'm not a practitioner of bodybuilding. I think it's great If it works for you, enjoy yourself. Be careful. But I'm all functional strength and self-defense. So I don't do a lot of body shaping.
This was only 5 minutes into the 3-hour podcast, and most of the live viewers thought that PBD was trying to stick it to Chris Cuomo, but then they slowly realized they were having a bro moment, stroking each other's egos to break the ice, and this pretty much set the mood for the next 3 hours. PBD kept throwing Cuomo softball questions and basically just lapped it up when Cuomo told him boring-ass stories about growing up in such a famous family. That's how Cuomo kept dodging all the shit that him and his brother got caught out for. He just put on his charm and pull out some bullshit story. And PBD and Adam would just sit there and listen like they were sitting on Daddy's lap while he told them war stories. At one point, they were simping so hard I had to pause it and go and do some yoga to calm myself down. Cuomo was talking about how he has to find his own sponsors now that he's an independent content creator. So PBD asked him about Manscaped, and it just escalated from there.
Manscaped yet? Have they reached out to you yet? Because they're going to reach out if they haven't
They're not
yet.
going to, first of all, no.
This is a very
but
important question.
My son has a manscaping kit that I got him.
So there you go. The
'Cause
17-year-old.
His game is strong. I am like a drop gene Italian. I am one of the most hairless I'm like the Mexican hairless Chihuahua. I am that version of an Italian
Yeah,
man.
you don't have any arm hair going
My
on here? Nothing.
grandmother had more of a mustache than I have.
Nice, hot. By the way, real quick, shout out to our sponsor today, Manscaped. I'm just kidding.
No, we're not doing no Manscaped.
No.
Well, by the way, you've done it before. You've done Manscaped before.
Yes,
I want to follow up on some of the questions here.
But then they got into the whole Fredo controversy, where 3 guys confronted Cuomo at a restaurant years ago while he was with his family and kept calling him Fredo, a reference to the useless brother in The Godfather, Fredo Corleone, who gets killed for betraying his brother, Michael Corleone, the main character.
You know this stupid video that is out there of me, of Shelter Island, where these 3 guys, they make it look like it one, but it was 3, coming at me about calling me Fredo. Here's what bothered me about that. One, and I'm sure you can agree with this, in front of your 9-year-old daughter, somebody calls you something that is offensive to you as an Assyrian Armenian, okay? They say it to your daughter, okay? Now you tell me if all that follows is a conversation. So first of all, they leave that part out. The media left it out. Why? Didn't serve their purpose.
Yeah.
They wanted me to be a big Italian hothead, muscle man who wanted to beat up this one little guy. It was 3 good-sized guys who stopped a 9-year-old girl and said, hey, you think Fredo will take a picture with us? Now, she didn't know what they were saying.
Yeah, the edited narrative strikes again.
But I then talked to them. Yeah, I was cursing, and I knew he had the camera out. I'm not a fool, But I didn't care because I thought the point mattered. And I'll tell you something. A couple years later...
Rob, can you pull up the video
Yeah,
just
go
so
ahead.
some people can see what it was? A couple years later.
I'm at a restaurant and I see this young woman looking at me kind of weird. I kind of look over, look back, I'm with a buddy of mine. And all of a sudden I see this guy standing next to her, which is one of these guys.
One of the 3.
And he
3
comes
guys.
over and he's like, hey, I just want to say I'm really sorry about that. I didn't know it was going to go
You
that way. I
recognized
didn't
him.
know that. I didn't really recognize him at the time, but then I did. And I shook his hand and I said, you know what? You don't have to apologize. The situation was ultimately on me. I'm the adult. I'm the TV guy. I should have known what was going to happen,
Yeah.
but I just didn't give a shit because at some point there has to be decency. And people will say, you're talking about decency. You were threatened about, you know the difference between me saying I'm going to do something to you and me doing it. That is a grace, okay? That I'm going to tell you what I should do to you, but I'm not doing it. That is a grace, okay? And I thought it was an accommodation. I was actually proud of myself. I actually called CNN and told them that this happened right after it because I was like, but I didn't touch anybody. I didn't touch anybody. One of the guys put his hand on me and I said, I'm telling you, take your hand off me. And I gave him the warning. He took the warning. But I understand why it blew up in my face, especially when the former president decided to weaponize it and use it against me as if I was the threat, not him. But in context, the kid, saying it to the kid, is just too
You know,
much
it's
for
crazy
me.
you're saying this, Rob. If you can go, just show 5 seconds of it. Just show 5 seconds of it, whatever, with a little bit of audio. Ilana, if we can go to
You don't see my daughter.
Yeah.
You don't hear the part where I
Play.
say you say that to a 9-year-old.
I thought that's who you were.
No, punk ass bitches from the right call me Fredo.
Yeah.
My name is Chris Cuomo.
And he said, I
I'm an
thought
anchor
that's
on
who you
Sky.
are.
You're
Oh,
Fredo
you
is
thought
from
my
The
name was
Godfather.
Fredo?
Yeah.
It was
So you
that
can
weak
pause
bro-
this. So we're in the
Right.
back. Let me tell you what's going on in the back. So we're going through all the stories. Are we bringing this up? Are we bringing that up? What's the last thing I said? What did we talk about at the end?
You're like, yeah, I don't want to bring it
I
up.
don't care about bringing this
Yeah.
up.
After they went over the whole situation, PBD and Adam started backpedaling and took Fredo's side because they're all tough guys who would have acted in the same way. But Joe Rogan had a pretty good take on this from back when it happened, and he called out Fredo for being a little bitch.
Did you see that?
Yeah, of course.
Did you see it, Jamie? That Chris Cuomo guy. So Donald Trump had the best line today. Donald Trump won the internet today with this. He said, "Should we red flag Chris Cuomo because he seemed unhinged? He was using terrible language. Should not have a gun." He basically exposed those red flag laws. Because, like, you see a guy like that, he's irrational. That guy's irrational. He goes, "I'll wreck your shit. I'll throw you down a flight of stairs."
I like the stairs comment. I enjoyed that.
Like, what is he talking about? Because the guy called you Fredo, and he was
I
saying that
didn't
Fredo is the same
know-
thing as the N-word.
I didn't know Fredo was derogatory, or maybe I'm new to it. I'm not that I would ever try to call someone Fredo. Sometimes, you know.
It's not. It's a fucking character in a movie. It's like Aladdin.
Is it like there's no, like, I don't know.
Cultural
Nothing-
context?
Yeah.
I'm Italian. There's no cultural context for Fredo where people are like, "What the fuck did you say?" It doesn't exist.
Sure.
It does not exist.
Right.
Well, you could say it for someone who's a traitor, but why? That doesn't even make sense with Chris Cuomo. It's just a loser in a movie.
Well, I guess
it's like
you know what he's trying to do. I mean, obviously he's trying to insult him.
Yes.
Even if there is no history of this word existing for, I'm ignorant. I don't know if it does exist or not. But, like, know this guy's trying to take shots.
It's certainly not a compliment.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a loser in a movie. It's a brother that always fell short, and he turned on his own brother, who was the Godfather.
What if
because he wanted to be the Godfather?
What if he explained this insult to Chris Cuomo?
That would be great.
He goes, Fredo was a weak Italian in the movie, and I'm
I feel like-
referencing your character.
Yes, you are the son of a great man because he's Mario Cuomo's son, and you probably, let's be honest about why you're here.
Yeah.
The name is familiar, and it helps.
Yeah.
But it's that Italian energy that, like, and again, these are my people.
Yeah.
These are my
You full
people.
Italian?
No,
Okay.
3/4 though. But these people that react that way are common. It's like, what? What the fuck did you say to me? I'll fucking wreck your shit.
Yeah.
But you're not supposed to be a respected political pundit and behave like that. That is nonsense.
Yeah.
That's nonsense. That's nonsense. It's a silly way to behave. It's silly. That guy needs to work out
You gotta
more,
be extra.
but he works out a lot.
It's tough. It's tough
He
when
might be on too much testosterone. So we need to take him to tell your doctor, just pare you down a little bit. Take whatever you're at, just drop it by half. Settle down, bro. Or just work out really hard before you go outside. Do some yoga.
Yeah.
Meditate.
I like when those, because LA's pretty passive town for the most part. You'll get some of those. You'll get like an East Coast guy. You're like, oh shit, who's this guy? You know what I mean?
Long Island.
Yeah. Like
East Coast,
visiting from
Long
out of
Island.
town. Like, whoa, no one.
Hey, Fredo,
Yeah, we don't actually fight here. We just
go
we
get
just
my
talk
shine
big.
box. Yeah. It's it was a very embarrassing moment. I think it's a very important moment. Look at him. First of all, he is Fredo for life now. I hope he understands that. He's Fredo for life.
Unless you want to get tossed down a flight of stairs.
He ain't tossing anybody down a flight of stairs. That's nonsense. He doesn't want to get sued. He's not going to do that. He's not going to touch somebody.
He'll hire someone.
He's
He'll
not
have a
going
hitman
to
throw
do
you
that.
down a flight of stairs.
He's not doing shit. Not doing a goddamn thing. That's one of the reasons why it's so funny. He's not doing nothing. That is Fredo. You'll never get away from that now.
So then finally, after they got through their midwit sideshow, towards the end of the second hour, PBD finally asked Fredo a decent question, calling out the mainstream media for parroting organised establishment talking points during the pandemic. Yet again, Fredo pulled out a few war stories to distract and deflect from his role in contributing to the fear and anxiety throughout the pandemic, receiving almost no pushback from PBD or Adam. They seemed like they were just happy Fredo agreed to be on their podcast and didn't want to push too hard so as not to ruin their new bubbling friendship, which was pretty disappointing seeing as PBD built his profile during the pandemic for calling out the mainstream media's fear-mongering narrative. But now when they were face-to-face with CNN's former poster boy, they just sucked on their thumbs and gave him a pass.
So the reason why I'm sharing this with you, and I also had a board meeting one day where all my board members are telling me, you got to get everybody in the company vaccinated. And I said, I can't do that. So for me, I'm not vaccinated. I didn't take the vaccine. I didn't take the booster. My wife didn't, but my dad did. My nanny did. A lot of people in my life did, but also didn't take ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. So it's not like we're part of a camp. When I watched all this stuff that was going on, I sat there and I said, no wonder America doesn't trust the media. No wonder we don't trust Fauci. No wonder whatever Chuck Schumer said there, he was right. We learned how much power the DOJ has. How do you get up and say the DOJ can ruin your life? This guy's been indicted 50 million times, all this stuff that they're doing to him. So one sits there and says, Chris, you were on the inside, bro. This is the kind of stuff that causes us to not trust anybody. Now that you're somewhat on the outside, you're still with News Nation, but you got your own show. Now you see the reason why American people lost trust in media?
Well, no, I don't see it differently now. Look, I can't say this strongly enough. I do not believe, and I have never experienced, and look, people can like what I do, don't like what I do. You know, the answer to your question is why I sound different is we've never had a conversation before. Is that most exposure to what I do is things taken in clips and put out into a context that people want it to be in. I don't believe in the First Amendment. You know, you can't download things. All this bullshit that people say about me is just playing to an agenda and advantage, and that's okay. That's the price of entry. But that's why I sound different, is that we've never spoken before. I'm not different. Nobody ever told me what to say or not say at CNN, and I would have told them to take a walk if they did.
That was pretty much it for me. Apart from my little yoga break, I'd sat through the whole podcast to that point and I was struggling to understand how this could happen. PBD has so many solid interviews in the bank, and I can't help but think that now he's become so successful, he maybe wants to join the mainstream elite himself. Otherwise, the only explanation I can think of is that PBD and Adam were straight up scared of Fredo and were even a little bit starstruck, so they played it safe to avoid any confrontation with him given his history of lifting 100-pound dumbbells over his head and losing his shit in restaurants. But seriously, I reckon PBD's going to cop a lot of heat for this. Like I said at the beginning, a whole bunch of people said they were unsubscribing because PBD was simping for Fredo. Maybe he thinks it doesn't matter because he'll gain more critical mass if he goes mainstream and platforms establishment shills like Fredo. And clearly for Fredo himself, he's trying to build his YouTube following. I don't know if you've seen his cringe as fuck video unboxing his 100,000 subscriber award, but he obviously went on PBD to build some clout for his own content. Some people in the live chat were even speculating that this episode of PBD was a paid ad by Fredo to help build his following. I'm not sure about that, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's true. PBD is a businessman with a shady past who made most of his money from his insurance company, PHP, which is a multi-level marketing scheme. If you don't believe me, just ask CoffeeZilla or just type in PHP MLM into YouTube and go for your life. But as for Fredo, his takes were a little confusing at times. On the one hand, he was agreeing with PBD's anti-establishment sentiment, basically saying he had similar curiosities to PBD around the JFK assassination, Donald Trump's political rise, and RFK Jr.'s growing popularity. But on the other hand, he was still spouting establishment narratives in bits and pieces here and there. My take is he was just pandering to PBD's anti-establishment audience, trying to game the podcast for clout with his audience. But if he's being honest and does have more questions and curiosities about the mainstream narratives over the last few years, then he was clearly a puppet to the establishment suits at CNN who were pulling his strings for so many years. Either way, whichever scenario is really true, Fredo's a spineless puppet who uses charm to push narratives that he doesn't really believe in. No one knows what he actually believes, and that's exactly what being a shill is. You simp for the guy who's paying your bills.
Were you
So
going
what
to say
you're
something
saying,
or
I
no?
think, ultimately is Cuomo 2024.
Wouldn't be me. Maybe one of my sisters. I run from office. not for office. It's not for me, brother.
You have my vote, brother.
If you and Andrew,
can do better.
If
you can do better
Thank
than
you.
me.
Cuomo Sosnick 2024.
If you and Andrew, if we did a podcast together, we'd have a couple hundred people here wanting to watch, and we'd have cigars in the back. I think it'd be very entertaining.
All in all, this was business as usual for Fredo, but PBD's true colors are starting to come through. Some people have been calling this for a while, but for others, this episode was a rude shock to their system. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button and become a subscriber so you can keep up to date with all my latest uploads. I'll chat to you guys soon. See you in the next one.
So if you're watching this, you enjoyed it as much as I did. Rob, let's put the link again below to go and subscribe to Chris's YouTube
Cuomo
channel.
Project.
The Chris Cuomo Project, as well as his show.
News Nation,
weeknights, 8 p.m. Once again with News Nation. Chris, appreciate you for coming out. Gang, have a great weekend. We'll do this again next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.